recording right off the bat. Kalie, I always forget to click that button. Every week, after about 10 minutes, people are putting in the chat, are you going to record? Are you going to record? And for some reason, it's been a mental block. Now, the last night of the semester, I remembered right away. So I'm pretty happy with that. I am excited that Kalie George is here. You may know some people, maybe, like Joe and Lee will be joining. He just texted, said he'd be a little bit late. Everybody else is likely someone that you don't know. But I have already explained to people via email that I'm excited that you're here. This whole master's program is on entrepreneurial ministry or ministry entrepreneurship. And so people are doing a wide variety of ideas and ministries and dreams, I guess, in some ways. And so I was so excited when I saw the Tabor video about what you're doing, and then that I got to go see, not you, but your location in Kansas City, because you were out driving the bus. But I really wanted to have students hear your story. And so I don't know where you want to start, and if you want to have people introduce themselves, you're welcome to do that. If you want to wait a little bit, I'm sure we've got a couple more people joining, but we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll just turn it over to you. Thanks for being here. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can start my journey, I guess, in urban ministry in the context. And that journey for me started at Tabor in lots of ways. I think I chose Tabor when I tell people it was the only school I looked at that had bathrooms that locked. And I think that was the selling point for me. Fun how God used kind of my 18-year-old petty decision-making process to land me in a place where I was exposed to some of the brokenness in the world around me. There's a chapel service where someone from World Impact was speaking, and they're talking about the realities of the urban poor living in Skid Row. If I'm super honest, I'm pretty a scared type of person. Like, puppies scare me. It's very strange. Lots of fears. And so I really believe the guy was saying that the urban core was a place I needed to pray for. And I did. And my prayers kept landing at the answer that I was the person that God wanted to send to that place. And so that summer, after that chapel service at Tabor, I moved into a homeless shelter in Kansas City, which is where my family is from. And I really felt like I was moving there to change the world, that I was going to be the superhero to people that, I don't know, that somehow my presence there was going to make things better. And I think that I realized when I was there that I had a lot to learn from people that were different than me. And that I needed a lot more saving than I was going to save. And so as a 19-year-old kid, I decided that the inner city was really where my heart was. And that the rhythm of the city, the culture of the city, the people there, it just all captured my heart. And so I moved back to the middle of nowhere, Hillsboro, and finished up my degree. And I worked real quick, got done in 3 years so that I could get out. Not because I hated where I was, but because I was so excited to live life in the city. And so I spent another summer after I graduated living in the shelter, and then I purchased a home in the inner city, and I worked the next 5.5 years at the shelter that I was at, directing the youth programs and trying to launch some ministries that would help with community development to try to break the cycle of poverty was kind of the language that we used. And I got to a point where the mission that God had given the organization I was working for was not the mission that God had given me. And I was working my hardest to change their mission to be mine. And finally, God gave me the wisdom to say, you know what? Our city really needs relief ministry. It needs rescue ministry. But it also needs some of these sustainable breaking the cycle of poverty ministries. The analogy or the image that kept coming to my brain, and forgive me that it's kind of morbid, but that there's a river flowing through our city. And there was babies that were floating in this river. And there were those rescue ministry people that were jumping into that river and pulling kids out, putting Band-Aids on things like poverty and poor health care, education deficiencies. And that was really important work. But I feel like God was saying someone has to walk up the river and figure out why kids are getting dropped in to begin with. And that sort of became the thing that propelled me, that it wasn't, it's necessary work to be there putting Band-Aids on problems in the midst of people's brokenness. But I really wanted to explore what it would look like to systematically change things in our city. And my passion was working with kids, is working with kids. I love kids. Grown-ups scare me real bad. But getting to hang with kids is really energizing. And so at the time that kind of I was processing through this, I had some high school girls living with me that were in some pretty rough situations. And we would do homework every night at dinner because I was a mean mom, is what I always told them. And it was really heartbreaking because these were girls that really were trying. In Kansas City, the public school district has a nearly 50% dropout rate. And so the fact that these girls were even still in school meant that they were trying more than half of their peers. And so I was proud of them in lots of ways, but as we were working on their homework, it was so, the work they were doing was way under the capacity that they had. One of the girls, her name is Jasmine, who was in an honors English class as a senior in high school, which she was so excited about, but her vocab words, she had 2 bonus words, and it was document and appreciate. 2 words that I felt like probably could have been 3rd grade spelling words, not college prep vocabulary words. But Jasmine graduated high school and went to go take a placement test to get into the junior college, and she did not place high enough to even be in the remedial course. She was going to require tutoring to be able to pass to get into the remedial class, take the remedial class, and then get into the basic class, which made her associate's degree timeline 4.5 years. And at that news, she just gave up. And her mom made money by having kids and getting support that way. And so that was Jasmine's decision. And at 18 years old, she got pregnant. At 19, she now has her own little baby. And it's hard to watch the cycle continue when I really believe that a quality education could have resolved much of it. As I was experiencing this tension with some of the high school girls I was hanging with, one of my really good friends, her name is Meredith, and she's the co-founder of our school. She was teaching in the public school district. Kansas City public schools are unaccredited currently. They are not doing an effective job at teaching kids, and I deeply am rooting for them to turn things around. I know for our city to be healthy, there has to be quality public schools for kids to have access to. But right now, that's just not happening. In the neighborhood that I live and where our school is, only 13% of kids are reading at grade level by 3rd grade, and only 7% of kids are proficient in math by 3rd grade. And that's just not acceptable. The district is working hard to change things around, but it's a 3% increase right now per year, which means we're like 20 years out from them reaching the proficient goal. And proficient is only 55% of kids being at that basic level. And so watching what was happening inside the public schools and seeing kind of the dismal effects that it was having on kids, and watching that kind of play out once kids graduated, I knew that something needed to change. And so I left my job. This is where the story gets crazy. But I left my job at City Union Mission, is where I directed the youth programs. I left there in January of 2014 and spent 3 months just praying about what it looked like to serve my neighborhood well. And I would hang with my neighbors, and I would go to public places, and I would really try to figure out where God was already at work and try to jump in where he was moving, and really just felt like I left my job for no reason. It was really a difficult 3 months for me. And at the end of March, this ridiculous notion of starting a school kept stirring in my heart. And I kept dismissing it, saying, my degree is in youth ministry. My background is not in education. I don't have any money. It's impossible to do that. But it wouldn't go away. And so in April, I approached Meredith about the option of her teaching at a school that we would start, which was laughable to her as well. How are we going to make money? What kind of kids would come to a school run by two white kids who don't have very much experience? There's a lot of really pressing questions, but through all of it, and I wish that I could say some like beautiful moment where God was like, Kalie, start a school, but it was just this thing inside of me that wouldn't go away. It just felt like a good idea. And although none of the facts seemed like a good idea, something inside of me resonated with it. And so the plan was that we would start the school in my basement. I live in the neighborhood, and so we would have no overhead costs. We could just invite the kids in, kids we already knew and had relationships with. In Kansas City, you don't have to go to school until you're 7, so it could be considered an early child care center, daycare. But we would teach educational content. We would get enough data and information to be able to go to a larger donor base and say, hey, we did it. It was effective. Will you buy in? And so I made a phone call to a family friend to put a window in my basement to have a second exit so we could be certified. And he informed me that it was creepy to have a school in your basement, which I totally agreed with. And basically his sentiment was that, one, it's weird, and the liability is probably really high. 2, it's not sustainable. After 1 year, what are you going to do? Turn your upstairs into the second, classroom? It just wasn't going to work. And so he calmly said, what you need to do is buy a building. Right. I recognize that, but I don't have any money, so we have to start somewhere. We have to kind of work up to that big endeavor. And he said that he would buy the building. And so the very next day, we had tacos together and looked at some properties through a random phone call from a realtor that wasn't ours, told us about the building that we're in currently. And at the beginning of May, we put an offer on a building, which was crazy. So now we had a school building. We had a dream to have a school, but that was about all we had. And so May 2014, we launched a YouTube video casting the vision of a kid that we knew well. His name is Brendan, and asking people to invest in his education. And it was a successful, I don't know what made it successful, but people bought into it. We raised over $100,000 through that YouTube video. We were able to start school in August with a bus that was donated to us, $100,000 in the bank, a school building, and 15 kindergarten students. And it was crazy. It was hard to keep up with all that God was doing, and we felt like we were really just trying our best to follow where he was leading. Since that point, it's been 1.5 years. We have added another grade. So we had just one kindergarten class last year. 86% of those students came back with us this year, which for a community that's very transient was something that we felt really proud of. Last year with those 15 kids, over 50% of those kids entered homelessness over the course of the year. 100% of the families came to us saying that they didn't have food in their home at some point. The realities of our students' lives were overwhelming so many times. But God continued to provide resources for us to meet some of their immediate needs and make partnerships in the community to do that. We were able to, unlike a public school who says, hey, you moved, tough luck, we chased kids around from house to house to house to make sure that we had a steady and firm relationship with them. We really deeply believe that, oftentimes in our community, education isn't valued. And so we knew we were going to have to work really, really hard for parents to buy in and for students to buy in. At the mission while I was working there, and even in the public schools, oftentimes you'll hear kids say things like, I don't need to read because reading is for white people. I'm not going to college because college is for white people. And so this notion that education wasn't a part of their life trajectory, and so they didn't need to be invested was something we knew we had to fight hard against. And so from the very beginning, we've cast the idea of education not as what you need to go to college or what you need to be successful, but it's what you need to do to be a good steward of the brain that God has given you. The education is a stewardship issue. It's a worship issue. And so we have that conversation with 5-year-olds and it's real fun. I think they get it more than I do oftentimes. And so we work really hard to communicate an accountability to God, and the beautiful reality that God is inviting us into his grand story of redemption. And as 5-year-olds, we get to be a part of that. And we get to steward the resources that he's given us in our brains, so we can grow up and we can communicate the good news of Jesus to people. Excuse me. We also know that we want them to love being at school. The question we ask ourselves from the beginning is, if kids didn't have to come to school, would they want to? Excuse me. And so one way that we work on that is we have a lot of field trips. We went to the zoo today. When it's 63 degrees in the middle of December, and you're studying polar bears, of course you should go to the zoo. Last year we went on 80 field trips. We're on pace to do the same thing this year. Twice a week we go and we touch what we're learning about in all sorts of ways. So those 15 kids moved on with us to first grade. We brought in actually 16 new kindergarten students and a couple more first graders. So we have 2 classes of 16 students, 32 kids that hang out with us every day. It costs about $7,000 to fund their tuition, and we raise all of that through private donors. We're completely funded for this school year and nearly 50% funded for the 2016-2017 school year, and are super excited about what God's doing. So it's crazy how one chapel service in a college campus that felt really insignificant has kind of played out, and God really capturing my heart, and in turn being able to do what I'm doing, which is really just incredible and a humbling experience, and excited to share it with y'all. But I know it's a long story and kind of crazy, but if you have questions about who we are, how we got here, and the process and that, I would love to field some of those questions for you.
So, Kalie, what we tend to do is in the chat, and you maybe see that highlighted at the bottom, people will put their name in the chat box, and then that's how we kind of keep track, just because there's so many people in the class. I'll keep moderating if we need to, but it looks like Vern, I could tell he was already chomping.
Oh, dude, I'm
10
so
minutes ago, Vern wanted to ask a question or jump in. But yeah, go ahead, Vern, and then it looks like Edith and Aubrey.
So I got 2 things. The first thing is my friends started a school like yours. They now have 9 schools, and they take over schools that are empty. And the way their school works is they sell slots into the school district, and they take, in any school district, they take the 5 or 6 most dysfunctional kids and send them to the school. It's adventure learning. And there's a lot of, between where you guys are, which is a really good spot, and growing that, there's a lot of things that I'd love to put you in touch with one of the guys I've been mentoring that is the second in command of that school, just to share ideas and to be encouraged, because what you're doing is phenomenal. And the second thing is, do you know who James Roswald is?
I'm not familiar with that name, no.
Okay, so this is a very quick story. The rest of the folks know this story. I came out to Tabor this last year, and I was coming back, and I ran out of money. I didn't have enough money to get home, so I went on Craigslist, and I found somebody who wanted a film gig done, and what do you know, I had to film stuff, so I went. And he wouldn't answer my call, but it turns out it was at the Harley dealership. So I go to the Harley dealership, and I shoot this film, this rock concert for this dude. What do you know? The guy's name's James Roswald, and he's one of the primary guys who funds the Union Mission. And so the event was for the Union Mission where you used to work.
Oh, yeah.
And I think maybe it would be a good connection to. So James, he does these rock and roll shows, and the funding goes to the mission. And it might be an idea to get to know James. He's an attorney. He's like he's an attorney in I don't know, Kansas City, I guess. And so he has connections into some of the funding stuff. And as an attorney, he might be able to help you smooth some of the way that you guys might need. So James Roswell, after this, I'll get your email and send it on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bern. I appreciate those. I wrote those names down, but we'll follow up. Thank you.
Edith, you're up.
Hi, I'm excited about your story too. I'm a homeschooler, so I understand what education is like on a smaller degree. My daughter lives in Kansas City, so that was exciting too to hear that you're there. I just have one quick question. What nationalities makes up your school's population there? Is it mostly black people, or do you have a mix of, do you have a wide variety of nationalities, or what? How is it composed?
Yeah, good question. About 99% of our students are African American, but that reflects our neighborhood, and all of our kids come from a 3-mile radius. We're working towards diversity, which there's lots of research that shows that some of the best ways to change some of the achievement gaps between the affluent families and families that are living below the poverty line is to have those rub shoulders together. And so we do have one student in each of our classes whose parents see this as a missions field. They're African Americans who have moved back into the city. And so we're excited to continue that. I think as we open that door up, there may be some more white families that have moved into this low-income neighborhood that would want to send their students here, and we're excited about that as well. So, but yeah, about 99% African American. We have one white student, but
yeah, interesting. All right, thanks.
Yeah, good question.
Aubrey?
Yeah, I just had a question about how you handle, since this is still pretty fresh, just sort of the discouragement or when things might be discouraging, how you handle that. I don't know if you might have said it earlier, but if you have a team, then how do you guys encourage each other? And then along with that, how are you looking ahead? Because it kind of sounds like, okay, so each year is sort of whatever happens, happens. So how do you guys stay encouraged about uncertainty?
Yeah, well, we have an amazing, we have both a board of directors and an advisory board, and they have been so wonderful at speaking truth to us. You know, this whole adventure has been sort of a walk of faith in many ways, and it's ridiculous. Over Christmas last year, we had a $100,000 check show up in the mailbox from an anonymous donor. We've raised over $800,000 in a year and a half without really asking for money. And so sometimes I have to kick myself and say, why am I discouraged when the God who created the world can so readily supply any need that we have? But if I'm honest, there are times where it's like, hey, that giving campaign I thought was going to go better than it is, or the needs of this community are way greater than this school is even, we're not putting a dent in the problem. And that board of directors has really come alongside of us to remind us of truth, to ask us good questions that keep us rooted in the thing that we've said yes to, which is both the gospel and education. And so we are, really thankful for that team of people. Our team, our staff, we're a staff of 5 right now, and we're committed to praying together. And oftentimes those are the moments where we feel the most encouraged, when we remember that Jesus loves these kids more than we ever could, and that it's not our responsibility to save them, but that's the great work that he's doing through the Holy Spirit. And I think that's a humbling and exciting thing to get to do together as a crew. Thinking forward, so we have 3 phases that we're working through. The building we're in now is 9,000 square feet, and it will hold us through 4th grade. And so phase 1 is to be an excellent K-4 school, and we'll achieve that by adding 1 grade each year. And so next year will be kindergarten 1st, 2nd, then we'll go to 3rd grade, and then 4th grade. At that point, we will need to relocate in order to house more students. And so we're in conversation with the community and with some realtors. Kansas City Public Schools shut down half of their public schools in 2008. 2 of those shut down schools are within 4 minutes of our current facility, one is on the same corner as we are. It's on the same street. And so the neighborhood would really like to have a thriving K-12 school back in the neighborhood. And so we're excited to jump into that. It's probably a $6 to $10 million project. And so we're in conversation with people that can maybe help us procure those funds through a myriad of ways. But K4, then 5, 8, then 9 through 12th grade are the 3 phases we're working on.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Lee.
Yeah, I think I'm up. Hey, Kalie.
Lee, what's up?
Hey, your story is so awesome. I'd love to do a video on it.
You should. Come on.
We captured her story this year for a class, and I'm happy to share that. Kalie let us come shoot a day and a half or something like that with her.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of her story on film, and we use it all over the place. So you're all over, girl. We youth groups, churches. So
I've caught up with some old friends through that video.
Hey, there you go. There you go. My question is, it sounds like it's not necessarily, I guess, a thorn yet, but, this idea, first of all, if you're happy to share it, if not, I think we all would understand, but would love to know how big God has been by you sharing maybe what operational budget typically is for your foundation right now, which probably would include the 5 salaries. So, what does it typically take to run your place on a year? And then also, it sounds like as far as donor relations and fundraising, right now you've just been telling your story to people, and people are diving in and grabbing on. It's not. Have you really had to wrestle with this idea of fundraising yet? Is it really where you're losing sleep yet? It sounds like God is just bringing people in, and you're sharing your story, and then somebody else is going to come in randomly. I guess I'm curious if, and as you think about any processes there with fundraising, has that become an element where you've had to, practice at it, and how's that worked for you so far? So kind of 2 questions there, I guess.
Yeah, so operationally, it costs about $7,000 per student. So next year we'll have 48 students.
Okay.
So we're looking, the 360,000.
Yeah.
We're shooting to raise 400,000 for next year to make sure that we're always saving and being prepared for the upcoming year. And so, we're a little over halfway there so far. And year-end giving, last year we raised almost 80% of our budget in December. And so we're excited to see how God provides. We are a little bit giddy about opening the mail every day. That $100,000 check in the mail last year really made the mailbox our friend. It's just fun to each day see who's joined the team. In terms of fundraising, we did create a strategic plan at the beginning of this year to hit some high points in the year where we know people are thinking about education or thinking about generosity or giving. When we started fundraising, it was the thing I didn't want to do, the thing that I just felt like I don't want to be the person that begs people for money. And God has really wrestled with me about my misunderstanding of what fundraising is. And I think in that process, the place where we've landed is we recognize that God is at work, that this grand story of redemption, where in Revelation, where he promises that he's making all things new, that he has given us an invitation to be a part of that big story in Kansas City. And what a privilege it is to in turn invite others into that story. And so fundraising, not in terms of saying, what can you guys do for us, but what can we do for you? How can we help you know God's heart more fully? How can we help you engage in the story that God is inviting you into? And as we've done that, it's taken so much pressure off of us. It's helped us see fundraising as a ministry and not as this thing we have to do grudgingly just so we can have jobs and do the thing we love to do. And so all of our fundraising efforts have been based on how can we faithfully steward the story that God has given us, and how can we faithfully invite others into that. And so there are points in the year where, like I said, we know people are thinking about that. Giving Tuesday has been one of our big fundraisers. We raised almost $20,000 this year in one day, which is just crazy that people respond to a silly holiday that I didn't even know existed 2 years ago. But yeah, we do lots of blogging and do our best to tell the story. Again, the thing that I really want to get better at is the actual ask. The actual, here is how you can jump into the story. And that's something we're trying to hone because it's still kind of uncomfortable for us at some level. But God is good. He's teaching us. And up to this point, like you said, there are people that we don't know who are making significant investments into the scholars we get to hang out with. And we're really thankful for that. I recognize it's probably unsustainable to keep our fingers crossed for big checks every year. And so we do have some strategic planning that we put in place.
Thank you.
Thanks. It looks like it's Greg, Aaron, then Joe. So why don't you guys just go in order then?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so for our program here, we all have some sort of project we need to do that's in line with our dream or what the focus of this program is. And so for mine, it's actually going to be teaching about 4 weeks of learning some essential things about New Testament Greek. And since it's only a 4-week class I'm going to be teaching, my main goal is just to create interest. So I'm curious how you've gone about creating interest. I mean, when I think of, I know this is stereotyping, but oh well, when you think of black students who are poor in the ghetto, you don't really think of them as, I really want to go to school this morning, you know? So how do you go about creating interest for people to buy into this program?
Yeah, one of maybe my favorite stories, a little kid we know named Michael. He's maybe the most thug of all the boys we have. He got silver teeth already at 7, a little grill going for him. And on the last day of school last year, we did take a summer break, a 2-month summer break last year, which we had decided before then that we were going to be a year-round school moving forward. But that last day of school was really affirming to us because we literally had to pull kids off the bus. They did not want to leave for summer break. And Michael, the kid who never cries, the kid who's always trying to be tough, was weeping on my shoulder and said, "Miss Kalie, I wish there never had to be a June 19th. And I said, "Buddy, I wish that too." But I think that what that moment showed me was that ultimately what had Michael invested is the anticipated place of safety. It was the one place in his life where he knew that he was loved like crazy, the place he knew where his needs were being met, the place he knew people were fighting for him. And it's such an honor to be that person for kids like Michael. And so for us, it's really easy because really all it takes is a couple hugs and some affirming words and pointing out God's fingerprints, and kids feel safe. And when they feel safe, suddenly just doors start opening up to their brains. When you don't have to worry about if you're going to eat, it becomes a little bit more easy to focus on the ABCs. And so in some ways, our jobs are even easier because investment can be so easy to create. And I anticipate that as they grow older, that will become increasingly difficult. That maybe 18-year-old boys will need more than a hug to feel affirmed and loved and supported. But hopefully, 10 years of investment, and then we'll pay off at that point. So that's what we do. We create a place of safety, and then we do everything we can to let kids touch what they're learning and to be exposed to those things. We had a lot of fun. We had an architect come in a couple weeks ago as we started our unit on shapes for the kindergartners. And so watch them all want to be architects because squares can make buildings, was just, I mean, it's so simple with the kids that we have, that a square can be captivating if you can see how that square can lead to a future that you think is interesting.
I was a little bit late, so you may have touched on this earlier. And if you did, I apologize ahead of time. So you talked about kind of the diversity, especially the racial diversity there within the school. Worker-wise, is it significantly more white? And if so, is there any sort of, maybe not within the students and the people that are actually involved, but in the community, is there any sort of that hostility or resistance towards kind of the white savior mindset? We're going to come in, we're going to help. I've seen that in different places I've worked. And I didn't know if that was something you guys have dealt with, or are they just pretty excited you guys are there helping?
Yeah, that's a question that we think about often. Our staff is exclusively white females, and that is really hard to say. It's almost feels embarrassing at some level, but we have to realize that I for a long time would really be upset at God for making me a white girl. Like, that's not fair. Like, I want to be a black man because black men like have more weight or more authority, and really had to wrestle a long time with the beauty of being a white female, and the great work that I get to have in saying, we call our kids, we say they have beautiful brown skin. And so the kids with beautiful brown skin at our school have been mistreated with people with peach skin like me. But not every person with peach skin wants to hurt you. And there's a lot of ways that we can have these conversations about race. And we try to be really honest. Over Thanksgiving, we read the Pete the Cat. I don't know if you guys know Pete the Cat. He's all the rage in kindergarten. But the Pete the Cat Thanksgiving book. And it ends by saying, like, the Pilgrims and Indians got along and had this great dinner and were friends. And we just said, no. The people with peach skin killed the people with brown skin. And then when the people with brown skin, moved out and there was no one to take care of the land, the people with peach skin went and found other people with beautiful brown skin and brought them to try to work for them. And they were, and to be really honest, even from a young age, the racial relations in our country, specifically in our city, have been really broken. But that God doesn't look at our skin, he looks at our hearts. And that doesn't mean we can't acknowledge the brokenness that skin has created, but we want to work together to fix it. And so that's how we address it with kids. Mm-hmm. With parents, we try really hard to put people in front of them that reflect their skin color. So we don't require families to pay tuition, but we do require them to come to 5 learning labs for the parents. And each of those learning labs are taught by African-American people in our community, because we want them to see that there are bankers with beautiful brown skin and there are teachers with beautiful brown skin, and it's not white people. And God has called us white people to be here, but we're not the only people that God is using in our city. So we're trying to be honest. We're trying to be transparent. We're trying to have the conversation, which honestly, with everything that's happening in the world, that conversation is really easy to jump into.
Right.
Because people are eager to have it.
Very cool. Well, thank you. It's just what I've heard. It's an awesome thing you guys are doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Aaron.
Hey, Kalie.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. When did you graduate from Tabor?
I graduated a year early, but in 2008.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were in my grade. I was a dumb jock back in those Tabor days. I've worked really hard to get rid of that. But it's good to see you're doing great things. You legitimately just answered my question about how you guys are proactively reaching the parents, because you mentioned just how the students make these comments like reading is for white people and college is for white people. So I think that's great that you're doing that. So off, like, really quick, something that just popped up in my head. Where do you see this school in 10 years?
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, for myself, probably it's obvious that I'm a bit of a dreamer. And so I know in this season, God has asked us to say yes to education. And so I pray that in 10 years, we will be an excellent kindergarten through ninth grade school that is equipping and inspiring kids to pursue education and create their brains well. I also pray that we are not just a school. There is not a gospel preaching church in our community, in the neighborhood that we live in. There's a lot of churches, but the prosperity gospel is really pervasive in our community, and it's really heartbreaking to watch. And so we would love to provide more wraparound services, create more of a community that's centered on the gospel and gospel rhythms. And I think that the beginning of that would be a church, that God would raise up a leader who would help us lead that. We've pitched the ideas to a lot of people. We have 32 families that are begging for community. So just come shepherd them. But so far, the only answer we got is, there could be a 5-year-old in your kindergarten class that God is stirring their heart now to grow up and be the pastor you're looking for. And if that's God's heart, then I pray for the patience to endure their growing up. But in 10 years, I would love to have a church that's serving families in our community as well.
Awesome. Thank you. You're inspiring.
Thank you.
Alex, you're up.
I was just curious about the teachers. What kind of, do you have them have to have the exact same credentials as public schools and all the state mandated things?
Yeah, good question. So we just have 2 teachers right now. But as we move forward, it will be a requirement that they have teaching certificates. That's not a requirement for private schools, but we want to make sure that we are hiring the best teachers. There are a lot of ways that we have set up even our pay structure to reflect that we want high quality teachers. Our teachers make more than anyone else on our staff. So often we see in schools that the best teachers become principals and get taken out of the classroom because of a pay issue. Being a principal is boring. That's what I do. And it doesn't take as much skill as it takes to be in a classroom all day long teaching kids. And so we want to attract really high quality teachers, and we want to retain those teachers. I don't know if that answers your question entirely, but that's our vision.
And how do you sort of advertise, I hate to use that word, but advertising of bringing teachers in? Are you looking for more teachers as this continues? Like, do you have, health packages? Have you gone that far into it, or?
We have. I almost said unfortunately. I've learned so much about being a grown-up over the past year and a half, and IRAs and all sorts of things. But so we do have those things available for teachers. We have a financial advisor who comes and meets not just with me, but with each of our teachers, and helps us all work together to make wise financial decisions that benefit not only our teachers, but help us be good stewards of the money God's entrusted us with. In terms of recruiting teachers, last year we did seek people out, all people of color, all people that we had seen be excellent teachers, and all of them turned us down because they felt like the place they were was the place that God wanted them to be. And in kind of the pit of our discouragement about what are we going to do, how do you find a high quality teacher for a school where you're not just a teacher, but you're like part janitor and fundraiser, and like we're just asking you to be a lot of things. But we got an email it was entitled Random Ramblings from a girl named Rachel Berg, who had never heard of before, met before. She heard about the UCA story on Facebook, and just God kept putting the school on her heart. kept waking her up at night. And so finally she emailed us. We had pizza together because probably all good job interviews should be over pizza. And it just felt like we were eating dinner with an old friend. And so we moved forward pretty quickly. She observed our school for a week. We observed her in her classroom for several days, and just felt like it was the right thing, and really confident that it was. She's an amazing asset to our school. And so again, it's one of those things where it wasn't like some brilliant PR move that landed us with her. It was God's grace to bring us a really good friend and co-laborer in this cool job we get to have. And moving forward, so this year we've had about 3 people apply for the job, none of which we've asked, some of which we don't know. And so we're kind of have a vetting process where they observe us and we observe them, and we have some honest conversations about the unique job description that we have. And hopefully we find another real good friend to live life alongside.
Okay, well, thank you for answering.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Great. Cricket.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, I kind of saw, I checked out your website, but I saw you had a thing for volunteers, but I guess coming from the Wichita area, I didn't know if there was a way like people like I could come and like observe or like shadow or just kind of see. I'm just kind of curious, like I love Kansas City, I love the area, I love, I guess, to maybe what made you kind of pick. I know you said you're in the inner city, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so, and I just kind of, just to kind of see it and just see more the kids, and you said that they walk, no, you have a bus and you're in like a 3-mile radius?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess my question would be, is there a way that we could come, like, or I and everyone else,
Yeah.
and kind of shadow, come hang out, come play? So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to have grown-ups come hang out with us. We have a lot of kids to love and a lot of stories to hear, and we only have a few years. And so the more people that can help us be a part of communicating God's great big love for kids, the better. Typically, there's lots of ways to make that happen. So love having people around. Shoot me an email sometime and we can coordinate something for sure. In terms of picking where we landed, Kansas City is a hyper-segregated city. There's a street called Troost that divides the city pretty starkly, black on the west side, or white on the west side, black on the east side. And so I knew that I wanted to live east of Troost because there is no reason for there to be a street that divides people racially. And so from there, I just wanted to find a house that would work for me. And so bringing my parents through homes was an intimidating and daunting task. To convince my parents that it was a good idea to buy a house with bullet holes in it was maybe the most challenging part of the endeavor. God was good. I bought a 2,000 square foot house for $12,000. Put a little bit of work into it, and it's a fun place to be. And I love where I live, and I love the neighbors that I have.
Oh, that's so great. I love hearing that. And yeah, God bless you guys. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Kalie, if you're okay, at the end or even tomorrow, I'll send out your email to everybody just so they can connect if that's all right. John, you were up next. The list is, the content keeps growing, but I'm trying to keep track of everybody as we move along.
Yeah. I absolutely detest fundraising as well. It's not fun at all. But one book and resource that has helped me detest it a little bit less has been A Spirituality of Fundraising by Henry Nouwen.
That's my favorite.
Okay. Good. My question is, how has the gospel changed your community in the last few years?
That is a great question, and maybe a hard question to pinpoint the answer to. I think that I'm sitting at my desk, and right across from our front desk is a wall of quotes that we have. And I think that maybe some of the quotes maybe answer the question best. My favorite is from a little girl named Janiyah, who comes from a really broken home. Basically, her mom didn't want her, and so she left her with her grandma, who also didn't want her. She was homeless. And so Janiyah has shuffled from place to place to place, and just has a lot of pain because of that. And one day she was praying, and her prayer said this. It says, God isn't going to let the sad things be true forever because he sent Jesus to die for us. And I think it's in moments like that where kids understand like the weightiness of the world around them, that we live in a world where sin has really destroyed a lot of beautiful things that God intended to bring life and goodness to us through, but that it's not going to be true forever, that there's hope, and that the darkness doesn't win, but there's a light that's bursting forth. We're celebrating Advent right now, and it's such a joy to feel that anticipation with kids who probably understand the depth of the brokenness that Jesus came to die for way more than I do. And so I think it's in those small moments where there's hope that kids can cling to, that things aren't going to be like this forever, that's been the most transformative. And then I think there's just small glimmers of families who are starting to get it. And I can't wait for the day where there's stories of just redemption of families that were broken coming back together, and where the gospel has really tangible effects. But right now we can see baby steps of families who have chosen to move closer to the school because they know they need more community. Families who are coming to parent-teacher conferences because they see something here. They see the spark in their kids' eyes, and they want to know more. And so we're excited to see how God uses those baby steps to build some cool redemptive stories that are worthy of his name. We're excited for it.
It's very cool. Thank you. Edith, you had another question. Kurt, is that a question, or are you just giving an exclamation? Is that what it was?
I'm just making an agreement.
Okay, all right. Edith.
I have a comment and then a question. My comment was, I can affirm what you said about Troost, because when I was visiting my daughter in late September, I was very surprised to hear her describe this street that runs just a couple blocks from where she lives. And she said, you just don't go past Troost because you run into the inner city. And so it just was amazing to me that there would be a street dividing this city and like that. I just haven't grown up around that at all. My question is it's really exciting to see your enthusiasm. I'm wondering what you do to take care of yourself. Do you schedule times for rest? So often caregivers burn out, and so I just was curious to know how you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that people ask me often. So I have a lot of accountability. When we created our school schedule, we did so knowing that we wanted to be faithful to God's command to rest. I think for me personally, I'm really prone to finding my identity in work. I love working. It's energizing to me. But I know that after weeks and weeks of that, or days and days of that, I start to believe that my value is wrapped up in that. I start to feel like a robot instead of knowing that I was created for relationship and not just for work. And so as we made our school calendar, we knew that we wanted to be a school that served kids year round, that was there consistently. But in order to do that, we needed to create breaks for ourselves. And so we have strategically made a school calendar that I think accomplishes both things. So the first thing we do is we have half days on Fridays so that we can create space where we can get work done that isn't in the evening, when we can work during work hours and then be done on Friday and have a weekend that's really a weekend. And that's been a really beautiful thing for our team. And then we also have made our breaks a little bit longer. And so for a winter break, instead of the traditional 2 weeks for Christmas, we take 3 weeks. For Thanksgiving, we took the whole week instead of just the last 3 days. Whenever there's a chunk of time where I think it's maybe like in March, there's not very many holidays or typical breaks. And so we just picked a Friday and said no school, so that we were making sure that consistently we were taking space away to remember that we were created for relationship, not for work. And we can't give kids what we don't have. And so we have to make sure that we're rooted in who Jesus is. And we have to create space to do that. It's a great question.
Good. Good for you.
Kurt, you're up.
Kalie, how's it going?
Good, thank you.
Have you heard of the Delancey Street Foundation?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, I'm gonna give you this link. They do it's not quite a school, but they do something similar with people that experience disparity, and there's a lot of, and there's criminal area, it's a high crime area because of poverty and whatnot. This lady that runs it, her name is Mimi, and she's rated one of the top influencers in the world based on what she does with the Delancey Street Foundation. And so I'm going to link this here for you. I couldn't remember the name of it, so I had to do a few Google searches. But this might be beneficial to you to find out how things get done there.
Yeah.
As far as transformation and everything goes, you mentioned a lot of education is for white people, power is for white people, that type of stuff. And this institution helps to overcome that. So that's all I wanted to say.
Very cool.
I had another question, but Greg asked the same question, so we're good.
Okay. Thanks. And Kalie, I don't know if you've got your chat box open, but a couple, like Vern threw a few links in there and those email addresses that he mentioned, and then Kurt's just posted this one too in the chat. But I can also curate that and email it to you as well if that helps later on. That helps. Vern had another question.
Yeah, thanks. I actually put them up there so I wouldn't forget to send them to you, and I'll do an intro for you so that it's not a cold call. One of the things that so with Yellow Breeches, they're actually funded by the school districts, and so there's some real framework that has to come around that, and clearly your funding mechanism frees you from a lot of the things that they have to deal with. But we partnered this year, our church. It turns out they put out a questionnaire to the kids, and a number of the kids were going to spend Thanksgiving with no caregiver at home. They either both worked or they didn't. They just didn't have any care. And so this Thanksgiving, we partnered with some food folks in our church, and we took 130 fully cooked meals to them for Thanksgiving. And the reason I'm bringing that up is don't be afraid to partner with the churches and tell them what you need. Everybody tends to get too caught up in money. And in fact, a lot of things, you can go right to what you actually need sometimes and get a better deal. So ultimately, we have church people showing up these folks' home and creating relationship. And that was a huge win. I think we may do it at Christmas again this year. But it was meeting needs together, and it was more of it was less of a charitable event and more of a bonding event.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We did partner with a local church to do Thanksgiving baskets for our families that needed them. Surprisingly, we've had a lot more luck connecting with private Christian schools in the suburbs. And I'm assuming some of that is because it's people who care about similar things, about Christian education. And so I think that's a good point, that sometimes those partnerships aren't financial necessarily, but create some cool relational and gift in kind opportunities.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Lee texted me and said he had to run at 8, so that's why your screen suddenly all changed, everyone, because he dropped out. Any other? This has been great, Kalie. Thank you so much, and you've just been a trooper, talking on, as we've just been throwing questions at you. So I appreciate that, and what I appreciate just in listening to you is you've maybe morphed. I mean, I don't know you from before, but you kind of mentioned about learning all these things. You went from the idea person, and now you're doing all the detail strategy. The strategy. It's not like you had the dream and then you just passed it all off. You've been really instrumental in the fine tooth details that we talk about a lot in this program about, the project management part of it. You're definitely well in that too. So that's been cool to hear both sides as you've talked about it.
Well, thank you. I feel, again, that's God's grace in so many ways. I think one of my favorite stories of that reality is reading blogs often. People in fundraising always talk about peer-to-peer fundraising. I had no idea what that meant, but we thought, hey, we'll just try it. So we identified some core people on our donor list. It's about 400 people who have donated. And we said, we'll pick, a couple of those people, ask them to raise money for us. And so we spent about 4 hours, combing through that list, picking people we felt comfortable asking, drafted an email, created a video, sent it out to that handful of people. And I sent it to all 400 people on the list, and just felt really upset, because it was something I didn't want to ask all 400 people, and it felt really presumptuous to do. And I went to bed angry at myself and just like, God, you picked the wrong person. I can't even send emails right. And that next morning, in that email, we had asked for $40,000 is what we thought we could raise together. That next morning, I woke up to someone who had gotten the email on accident, and they sent the $40,000. And just watch God use my brokenness and watched him use me fumbling around trying to make it work to do really beautiful things. And so I'm humbled to get to be a part of that grand story.
Thank you. That's really awesome. That's really cool. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. This has been great. And like I said, I will, I'm jotting this down so I don't forget, but I will email, just link you in on the email if you don't mind. All these people are safe. Nobody's going to spam you or harass you, or I can vouch for everyone on this call, so you'll be fine. But yeah, if you don't mind, then people can share ideas and stuff with you. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Can we pray for you before we sign off tonight?
Yes.
Wonder if yeah, right. In the chat we said we can't vouch for Lee. He's gone, so I'm sorry, I can't vouch for him. Somebody whose heart's really been passionately grabbed tonight, want to pray? Just start. Unmute yourself and go for it.
I will. Father God, we just come to you and we just give you all the glory and all the praise for what you're doing in just the urban city of Kansas City with Kalie and her Christian Academy, just with those kids and their families, and God, just that when they're wrapping their arms around those little ones, that they feel your love and hear what you have done to send your son to save each and every one of us. And God, we thank you for Kalie and her staff and for what they are doing for your kingdom, God. And we just pray as we come into as we are in the Christmas season, that you will fill our hearts with so much more love to give to others around us, to share kindness, and just remind and let others know who it is that you sent on in this Christmas season, your son, born in a manger. And God, we thank you again just for what you're doing in all of our hearts for your kingdom. And we pray that it will glorify your name in all that we do. We love you, God, and we praise you in your name. Amen.
Amen. Well, Kalie, thank you again. Thanks for staying late at work, it sounds like, and for hanging around with us tonight. It's been really, really great. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, guys. Good luck chasing your dreams.
Thank
We'll talk to you later.
Thanks,
Okay.
Kalie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.